Hello and welcome to Microeconomics. In the last session when we were talking, we decided that we were very interested in the responsiveness of consumers. Someone asked the question the other day, does that mean that we don't change our behavior as related to price? And the answer, of course, is no. We will end up having to change, but we want to know before we change our prices exactly what's going to happen. Today we're going to extend that concept a little bit, and we're going to talk about some other sorts of responsiveness that we need to know about as well that will help us get a grip on exactly how we can best serve the customers in our marketplace. But I thought before we did that perhaps we might stop for just a second and to look at an actual calculation. Last time we looked at more of a conceptual sort of way of looking at it. Today we want to start out at least by looking at how would you actually calculate these, and I think sometimes that helps us to get a little better understanding of exactly what we're talking about. So we're going to go back to our pizza example. We're going to go back to the slide that we had back a little while back when we first started talking about supply and demand. And if you'll remember, we had various different prices for pizza and various different quantities demanded for the various different prices for pizza. And this is kind of where we finished this up. And of course, we later on then found the supply curve that goes with it and talked about the equilibrium and how the market would finally find a spot that would be satisfactory to both sides of the market. What we want to do today is to think about how could we calculate the actual elasticity, which, to remind you, is our measure of responsiveness. How could we calculate the actual elasticity for this particular curve? Now, I gave you a kind of a conceptual, in fact, I gave you two different formulas last time, and both of those were kind of conceptual in nature. Where we want to get this time is we want to talk about actually calculating the numbers. And when we calculate the numbers, we have to choose 2 points. And what we're going to do essentially is we're going to choose 2 points. In this case, I'm going to choose points A and point B. So we're going to go from a price of $15 to a price of $12, and we know that the quantity demanded is going to change from $8 to $14. I can designate either of those as point 1 and either of them as point 2. It's not going to matter. Remember that when we do this calculation, we know that either the numerator or the denominator, one or the other, are going to be a negative number because price and quantity move in opposite directions. So I can choose one of them. I want to take the difference in the quantities and divide it by the average value for the quantities, because remember the formula is percentage change in quantity demanded divided by percentage change in price. So that's the numerator. In the denominator, I'm going to take the difference in the prices and then take the average of those, divide this portion out, divide this portion out, so I'm going to get a numerator and a denominator, and then I'm going to divide the two. Now, remember that we're going to ignore the sign. So the sign, we're going to do absolute values. And the reason we're going to do that is because we know the sign has got to be negative. That only tells us that the law of demand is in place. It doesn't tell us any new information that we didn't already have. So let's choose the 2 points. And we've chosen the points $15 and $12. So the difference in quantities is 6. That's the difference between 8 and 14. So that difference is 6. Divided by the average. So we're going to average the 8 and 14. So we sum them and divide by 2. That will give us the numerator. In the denominator, the difference in price is $3. So that's the 3. And then the average of the price, because remember we're interested in percentage-wise, how big is that? And so that's 15 plus 12 divided by 2. Now it's just a matter of arithmetic. So we divide this portion. I've done it in 2 steps for you. You calculate this number, and that gives you the 11. So the average of these two is 11. You calculate this, and that's an average of 13.5. So numerator is going to be 6/11. Denominator is 3 13.5, whatever that is. Remember that we're taking the absolute value, so I'm ignoring the signs. One or the other of these is going to be negative. We get 0.5454 in the numerator, 0.2222 in the denominator, And so the number that we get overall is 2.45. 2.45, reminder again, means that it is elastic. That means that the change in quantity, the reaction in terms of quantity is much larger than the reaction in terms of price. Our consumers changed their percentage of quantity demanded more than we changed our percentage of price change. So we have in fact established that that's in fact the case. Now think for a moment, you could go ahead and do the numbers yourself down here for points D and E, and one of the things that you should be able to see fairly straightforwardly, this change is going to again be 6, but it's going to be 6 over something along about 27.5, something in that neighborhood. This number is going to be 3, but this time it's going to be over about 4, 4.5. So you're going to get about 3/4 in the numerator and something fairly small in the denominator. And so you're going to end up with a much smaller fraction than you did before. And that goes with what we said last time, and that is that the reaction of consumers at these upper price levels is much stronger than it is at these lower price levels. Though there's only $3 difference, a difference in $3 on a pizza at $15 matters more to you than a difference of $3 when the pizza is already $6. And so we see that consumers, and this is a linear demand schedule, wouldn't necessarily be true if it wasn't linear, but this is a linear demand schedule. And so one of the things that we observe is that consumers do in fact change their behavior more strongly at higher price levels than they do at lower price levels. Now, this is only one kind of elasticity. It's the most frequently talked about one, and in fact, if you hear someone refer to elasticity, this is the one that they typically mean. But there are at least 2 more significant types of elasticity, and we want to look at those now. The first one is income elasticity of demand. And here, we're looking at the responsiveness of demand to a change in consumer income. So now rather than having in the denominator price changes, we now have income changes. So in the numerator we have percentage change in quantity demanded divided by the percentage, and in the denominator the percentage change in income. Now we care about what the sign is. In this case, in the case of demand, we did not care. In this case we do, because the sign tells us what type of a good it is. If that number is negative, then it means it's an inferior good. If that number is positive, it means that it's a normal good. And obviously the absolute size of it tells us how strong that is. So this is the way that we can determine whether a good is an inferior good or a normal good, and it's through using the income elasticity of demand. Normal goods are income inelastic, and luxury goods are income elastic. That is to say, necessities, we don't react much to a change in income level, but for things that are luxuries, we do. And you can see here some actual estimates of income elasticities, and you see that private education is a normal good, and it's a very strong, it's a luxury good. It's a very strong number, big number. And you work your own way down, and you can see down at the bottom, beer and flour are actually inferior goods. Although they're not strongly inferior, they are inferior goods. Goods in the chicken comes in at 1, which means that there's very little change in the amount of the good chicken that you buy when you have a change in income. And this explains why it is that we have a farm problem, because demand is price inelastic for farm goods. And so as a result, if you grow more and more, you don't make a lot more money. If you grow less and less, you still don't make a whole lot more money. And so as a result, farmers find themselves always having to struggle to increase their total revenue. It doesn't change much no matter whether the price falls or rises. Now, the other type of elasticity that we wanted to talk about was the cross-price elasticity of demand. And here, this one's always confusing because we're not talking about the price of that particular good, we're talking about the price of a different good. And so now we want to talk about the percentage change in quantity demanded for one good divided by the percentage change in price of another good. So we have two goods that we believe have some sort of relationship. And so we're going to look at, if we change the price of one good, how does it affect the quantity demanded of the other good? If that number is positive, it means the two are substitutes. If it's negative, it means they're complements. Positive, of course, would mean that as the percentage change in the price of one good goes up, the quantity demanded of the other good also goes up. And that was our definition for substitutes. On the other hand, if the price goes up on one good and the demand of the other good goes down, the quantity demanded for the other good goes down, then the two are complements. And again, that was our definition. If on the other hand, there seems to be no relationship whatsoever, if that number is close to zero, then we can say that the two are unrelated. Now, I know that concept is somewhat hard to get at. It's a little bit confusing, and it's a little bit, it may strike you as being somewhat esoteric, but it's not esoteric, and here's why it's not esoteric. Some years ago, Dow Chemical was under suit by the Justice Department for having, they made 98% of the plastic wrap in the country, and so they were under suit as being a monopoly. And Dow was able to show through using cross-price elasticity that in fact changes in prices of aluminum foil, changes in prices of wax paper and other products affected their product. And so they were able to show that their market was not plastic wrap, but their market was anything that you could use to wrap up food. And so today, that's our way of testing and seeing whether, exactly how big is the market, what are substitutes one for another. And so it's kind of the necessary proof. Well, that wraps up our discussion of elasticity. These last two are certainly not as useful to us as business people as the first two are, but it does give us a little added information and a little new way of trying to do the best we can to solve the needs and wants of our consumers. We'll see you all again next time when we'll talk a little bit more about consumers and how they behave and what's the motivation for their behavior as seen in the law of demand. Thank you and see you next time.